Doesn't this look fancy? Freely mixing up colors with no worry about perfect blending and ending up with quite a cool result that looks like something's on fire. Much more easily said than done, right? Well, maybe not. So what if I told you that this was about as easy as doing object source lighting, OSL, or making things glow on miniatures? That is going to be the subject of today's video. We're also going to learn what a rubber duck can teach you about painting miniatures. We're going to have to rewind a little bit first and do a little bit of theory to begin though. Let's jump straight in. Forgive us if there's a couple of costume changes in this one. This is the second time recording some of this video because we really wanted to get it right and break this down as simply as possible for you guys. So OSL is undeniably one of the most striking things you can do in miniature painting. Lighting is important in all of art, and taking lighting on a large scale, let's say from like a landscape or, you know, cool sci-fi art or something like that, and making it work on a miniature is definitely and undeniably quite an intimidating subject. So how to get to where we were before, how to make it work on a miniature, and how to make this work without an airbrush and without it looking like an explosion of Moot green all over one of your tile models. So, I'm never going to share that. Anyway, this video is going to break it down for you pretty easily. We've got some steps and we've got some tips. So we've got a few steps that are numbered and we've got a few tips that are numbered, not that the numbers matter on the tips. And following these should enable you to give your very first good go at OSL, or if it's something that you've struggled with in the past, maybe following these steps or looking at, you know, where you went wrong, which is normally the previous step, maybe this will allow you to get a better go at it than you ever have before, or enhance effects that you've managed to do previously. In case you are new to the channel, and there's a lot of you, these are our brushes that I designed myself several years ago. They are perfect for dry brushing, they are the best. Primarily we're using Series D's extra large here and Series D's medium. You can use whatever brushes you're comfortable with though. I will pop a link down to our brushes below. We ship them worldwide and they're amazing. We've got multiple colors in this. You've already seen them. There's multiple. We're going to give you the rules though. So you can follow our recipes if you like. You can use fluorescent paints if you like. We've used some on some of the mixes. We haven't on others. Yeah, we've got a lot of different examples here. Using the rules though, you should be able to make anything look like it's glowing pretty easily. So we're going to start off with the theory about the colors. I know I've just said 2 words that people find scary in a video on a subject that people are already intimidated about. We're going to make it super duper simple, and actually it's quite similar to our recent Carapace video that went down really well, and we're going to involve the theory of X factor colors, which is just taking a deeper, cooler, saturated color, cool as in like awesome, not cool as in cold, and using that to kind of level things up and make things look realistic. Anyway, let's jump straight into a little bit of that theory, and then we'll put it to the practice on multiple colors really fast, really easily. And don't worry about precision. There's no place for that here. We're just going to get roughly the right colors in roughly the right place. The colors bit is incredibly simple. This is a color wheel. You can Google them. If you want to find them, I'll pop a link to some below that we sell. But yeah, you can just go on Google and find a picture of one of these. It's a very simple concept. So let's say that you want to do a bright yellow. All we're going to do is we're going to make sure that in the earlier steps, some of the colors next to the bright yellow are involved, the deeper, darker ones. So for bright yellow, that might be orange, yellow, orange, or you could even go to Reddy, like in the far off reaches of where the light can just about reach. And then as you get closer to the source, you're going to get closer to your color. And if you actually have a source in there, like a light bulb or something, that's going to maybe go to pure white or just off a pure white, like a very light yellow. That's it. There's multiple examples that we're hopefully showing on screen now that I'm mixing up. If it's green, we'll go to yellow. If it is a blue-green, we'll go to like blue-violet or something like that. It's very easy. You just go 2 hops around the wheel like we did for our X Factor colors on our Carapaces, which turned out really well and people really enjoyed the theory that we used there. That's it. I've told you everything you need to know about it. Now we're going to move on to just how little precision you need when you're doing this. And we're going to talk a little bit about references of proper things in real life or nature, or basically just our references. So the really simple theory that we've got here is that we're just going to take whatever our deeper, dark X factor color is, and that's going to be, there's a lot of rings involved in this. Let's say the source is in the middle of the camera here right now. It's going to be the brightest, slightly deeper and darker, and it's going to fade as well, slightly deeper and darker, more faded, and then basically it'll fade into nothing. That's it. And you just got to think about what this light could reach. So if there's something in the way that would be casting a shadow, like my hand is on my face, the light's not going to reach here, but it is going to reach here. Very simple in theory, but maybe a little bit more difficult to apply to a miniature. So we're going to use directional strokes with dry brushing, or just thinking about it to help us out. Do not worry about precision. I'm going to repeat this a lot. I've got 5 tips coming up soon. Once we've gone through this example, they're going to help you try it out on your first miniature and smash it out the park. So let's look at something that's being lit from the side in multiple colors. Let's go. You can see my references from my previous ones off to the side. color wheel. I've got art reference behind me, by the way. You know, whatever color you're going for, pull up a picture, Google things like, you know, like sci-fi corridor lighting or something like that. Don't get intimidated about this. It's gonna be very simple. So we want to do a green. We want it to be pretty bright. So we're going to do a yellow green, a striking one. And what that means is that we're going to have a blue green in the shadows. So this is going to be our highlight. That'll be the last bit that we paint. And this is going to be the first that we paint here. And probably we're going to go through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7 steps on our way to get there. What's that going to look like in actuality? So let's say that's nearly as bright as we go. That becomes something a bit more like Warpstone. And look, you can even tell this is blue-green, right? Because before I've shaken it, the blue's risen. I'm counting mixing as a step, by the way, or slight transparency. It could be less than this, it could be more. And then what we're going to do is we will be using white as our kind of secret weapon at the very end, and that's going to help this not get, you know, kind of pastel and diluted. We're going to put white down when we've taken it to a darker color and then put a light color over it, and that'll enable it to go down and be really light. We could use fluorescence as well, that is optional. So this is what we're looking to achieve on our miniature. Sounds pretty simple. It is basically that simple to do it on a miniature. Essentially, you could have 7 steps, you could have 9, you could have 10. It just depends if you want to blend between your colors. Of course, if you want to mix between 2 or just use another pre-existing color, that's fine, whatever suits you. Do remember that if you want a more weak version of any paint, don't get scared about blending or the concept of transitions. We can just use a little bit more water, we're stippling, it's going to be super easy. So without further ado, let's make this look pretty awesome, pretty fast. I'm going to set a tone here with how precise this base coat looks. This is how much you need to worry about precision when you're doing this technique. And I really want you to take me very, very literally on that. Trollslayer. Dry brush time. Sorry, I'm not going to Bob Ross this one, guys. It's painting fury. Little circles. I want this to just be shaded all over. And we really want it looking ancient and old. Make sure we clean our brush. Even if we are in a rush, there is always time to clean your brush on your palette, even if it's an old one. All right, don't know which way around it is, but I'm left-handed and that's a handle, so I'll take it. So let's start out. Step 0 is the base coat. That's dark. I'm gonna line up all the colors ready. Don't know if we'll use the Fluro, but it's there if needed. We'll definitely use the white. Okay, so like I said, blending. Let's start off with a big round circle. My light's going to come from this direction, top right. So I'm going to cover everything, and I'm using my dry brush in the direction of the light. So I can poke towards what the light could reach. Make sure you let steps dry fully. It's the only technical thing about this, and it just involves observation of really obvious things. You can poke towards, or you can dry brush away. Either of those is fine. Step number 1 down. Step number 2 is really simple. Just shrink the area and repeat it. We had a diluted one. Now we're going to end up with a more pure one. Starting stippling and then finishing dry brushing away. Keep some water involved. Obviously I'm using a huge brush here. You can use whatever brush you're comfortable with. Mix between our 2 colors. It's just the same, but we shrink it. Heavier closer to the source. You can already see it starting to work.
Again, if I dry brushed on that now, it would instantly be bad dry brushing. So all you got to do is let it dry. It's exactly that micro lack of patience that you'll be disproportionately not rewarded for. Punished, there is a word for that. If you want to stipple a transition, dilute your mix a bit more, but we don't really have to worry about it, honestly, that's smooth enough. The reason that I'm using more water more regularly than normal is because it's actually quite warm at the moment, and I'm also using a very big brush. I'm going quite quick. And also the more you clean your brush, the more that you'll take water away from your palette. Okay, so we're in a pure version of the paint now, or pure-ish. Test. Got your thumb as well if you need. Being a bit more careful now, my colours are brighter. Let it dry. Oh, a bit too wet. I'm going to a bright green. Don't need to clean the brush fully because we're going to use a mix anyway. Might nearly be time for me to use a smaller brush, but we'll see how far we can go. Gently and more carefully. You can see the proportion that I'm stippling, but I continue dry brushing the whole thing. I'm just more careful with the dry brush. Dry brushing is going to hit the edges regardless, and the direction is super important. The direction is what's going to sell the illumination. Things will get hit more if they stick out more, and if they stick out more, they get hit more by the light. You're working with your model, not fighting it. Clean the brush to go for a pure mix of our Moot. Nearly there now. The nice thing about starting in the corner is if you got too much, it doesn't really matter there. Not at all. Dilute it a bit more. And the directional stuff. Going to involve a bit of our fluoro now. This won't do much because fluoro doesn't do much unless you involve a white, but it should be slightly noticeable. Your fluoro will take longer to dry. It's a bit more gel-like, a bit more goopy. Carefully going to dry brush. Really soft touch here at this stage. Now that's where most people would think that that's as far as you can go. We're going to involve the white now. That's our superpower. So I'm going to grab another brush. Could be a big one, could be a small one, whatever helps you. Take some of our white. Got to be careful here. We don't need a pure white, but we do need to make sure that whatever it is only just about leaving the brush. See it pick up on these edges instantly. That's what we're going for. Only in the direction of our light. Super important here. Be disciplined, don't change the rules now, and don't rush towards the end. If you're struggling to get in somewhere that you need to, get in and twist. Then I'm going to use an ever so slightly heavier application closer to my imagined source. Soft. Okay, we're getting there. If you're going to stick with this brush rather than the previous brush, you really want to make sure that you get a lot of the white off. Grab some of that fluoro. And carefully, you want to cover all those bits. You don't want that white there. That white's for the light source. There you go. You can go around, back to that white, back to the green, back to the white, back to the green, as much as you like. Like if I wanted to hit these down here, because I thought it'd look cool. As long as you're careful with the application, that is entirely within your power. You will have to stop at some point because you can't avoid building up texture, even if you're careful you're dry brushing. I'll give my brush a full clean, a last very diluted coat of the fluoro, and then we're good. Could just use pure Moot here as well. You want any of the ones that aren't pastel, like you wouldn't use that in place of magenta. You wouldn't use that in place of green. There we go. Give it a final little dust. Clean out those recesses. People forget this. Works wonders. We're done.
Obviously, we've numbered the steps in our examples. You could have more steps, you could have less. So I want to make it completely clear it's the sequence that is important and the rules. So the rules that we're following are going to be, you start from ground zero, that's going to be whatever your undercoat is, your base coat. We chose darker, makes it easier, as we've covered. Then you're going to have your X Factor color. Probably going to be quite dilute, it won't cover so well. Then you're going to have a pure version of that. Then you're going to mix it with probably your main event color. Let's say it's magenta, magenta pure. Then you're going to mix that with the brightest version of your color. And then you're going to go to a pure version of that color, and then you're going to go to white. And once you're at that point, you can go around as much or as little as you want. Do follow references here. Look, if you're painting the source, look what the source looks like. Look at an example of a light bulb or something like that. I'll put up an example here. This person's got a Patreon, by the way, if it is as good as their painting. It's definitely worth checking out. Really gorgeous stuff from him. Looking how the light behaves there is really important. Maybe it's not the brightest in the middle of the lamp, maybe it's brightest at the edge of the lamp or something like that. Check out a reference. If you are in doubt and Ducky's coming, don't worry, you could just take a bath. So let's check out some, I'm not joking, let's check out some reference photos here to really kind of bring real life into our painting equation. So, what if you want to apply this to anything? We've got 5 tips that you can use to apply it on anything. They're especially good if you're beginning out, and some of them are really just geared at giving yourselves a little bit of an easier start than starting on something that might be tricky for reasons that you don't understand. Tip number 1 is very simple. Start on a dark background. It's more forgiving and you'll give yourself more room for contrast between your dark background and your light source. Also, you can just hide your mistakes in the shadows. So it really is a lot more forgiving to start on a dark background like our dark rusty brown that we've used here. Tip number 2, and that is direction of the light. So what can your light see? Really, really easy here. You'll see me turning my things around a lot when I'm painting them. I'm trying to see from the perspective of my light what the light would be reaching, and I'm taking my strokes in that direction. Especially easy with dry brushing, but it'll stop you from, painting behind something that would be in shadow or something like that. Really, really helpful and very, very simple. Tip number 3. So there's no space for perfection in this, especially as a beginner. Don't beat yourself up unnecessarily. We're much rather going for impression than perfection. So we want to get roughly the right things in roughly the right places, probably refine the end, which involves just the little bits that are catching the lightest bits, the light source itself. Get there at a steady pace, don't rush, but don't beat yourself up trying to get perfect blends on the way, especially at the beginning, they just really don't matter. Number 4, very, very simple, reference. So get a picture of something that is like the thing that you want, or get someone else's miniature, zoom right in on it and see what color is in what place. You might be surprised actually by this, how light it is at the light source, how bright the green is where, how much of it is the mid-tone, how much of it is the darkest color, if it's like a big dark green halo like the wall that we've used as an example in this one. Yeah, follow a reference, it'll make it easier and it just saves you beating yourself up. Take your reference and then roughly apply what you've seen to your model without beating yourself up about getting perfect blends and stuff on the way. Much, much, much more useful to just try and get things right, learn from it and move on to the next one. Number 5 is the colors or the paint. So we touched on using your reference. Make sure that the paints you're using are helping you out. So don't use something for coverage reasons like a dirty Avalanche Sunset when you could use Flash Gitz Yellow. Sometimes you'd avoid paints like this because it's harder to get a stronger effect with them. With our trick with the white that we've done, it's just not an issue. So use the right colors in order to get the right effect. Because you don't have to worry about the coverage, it's a lot more forgiving. So you just pick the right color for the job. And as long as it's not like some super matte, super strong paint in the final steps, you should be absolutely fine. Citadel are great. So yeah, use the right colors to get the job done. Bonus tip, by the way, cameras hate really bright colors that are fluorescent. So if you finished your paint job and you have used fluorescent paints and you take a picture and you think it looks rubbish, don't doubt yourself. Your eyes are better than your camera. Sometimes cameras just don't know what to do about it. Best tip for taking pictures of your stuff like this is maybe turn your lights down lower than normal or take them further away from the miniature. If you're on a phone, tap on the miniature in the middle, the lightest bit of the miniature on your phone, and then just drag the darkness slider down, and that'll probably make your picture look a lot more like it is in real life. Okay, it's going to be a different type of outro. We're going to outro out with some points to remember. So if you've got any questions about any of these, pop them below. You've got any comments, pop them below. You've got any suggestions, pop them below. If you're not subscribed, we're super close to 100K, so please consider subscribing. Anyway, let's look at what I discovered in the bath. One thing to remember is that reflections are going to be a dimmer version than the source in general. Closer to the source is going to be harsher and more crisp, and further away it's going to be softer and more diffuse. Why? You might be wondering why I haven't covered it. Generally what that's going to do is going to illuminate what's around it and just brighten it up. Rarely is it going to be a pure light. It's either going to generally be a cold light or a warm light. Often it's going to be blue. Cool is sci-fi generally, warm is more fantasy, purple is magic-y. We can also see from our reference photos the directional stuff. Light's coming away. Even those tiles very, very far from the light that are pretty much dark, the lips of them are still being lit up. So that dry brushing motion that we've used is absolutely perfect. It's evident on all of our squares. Hopefully you found the tutorial useful. Please do consider subscribing if you're not subscribed, and check out the brushes that I've used in this tutorial. I've used Series D, M, the medium, and extra large pretty much exclusively for this when I wasn't using the brushes, in which case I was often using a Series S00. All right, so if you thought you'd had enough of me, sorry. What we're going to do here is we're going to show you me playing everything that we've just spoken about to use at or me at least attempting to do this at a slightly fancier level. So we started off with our nice dark background, and we're just going to rush through the dry brushing stages here. This has got dirty down rust on it. If you want to see more about that and exactly how to achieve this effect, I'll make sure there's a video popping up now, or at least a card. So you can see that I'm trying to keep things really dark and dank. I've given a little bit more attention to the door. Maybe I could have kept it a bit more minimal than that, I think, but it's still a fine base. Those two markers there are so I know where the light is going to be reflecting. So I'm going to pull the door out separately, and that's going to enable us to paint it without kind of unrealistic overspill. Just our Lupercal green here, using it heavily diluted. Thinking carefully about how far I'd reach, what would be casting shadows, what it wouldn't be behind, and we're using the direction of our strokes really, really, really carefully. You're going to see me changing my left hand a lot here to make sure that I'm holding the piece at an angle that's helpful to me to be able to get the effect that I'm looking for from the angle that I'm having to work to get it looking realistic. Got a mix now, so we've got our Warpstone mixed with the Lupercal green. Always starting off in the areas that are going to end up being the brightest. Doesn't matter if I make a mistake there. Again, if you want to do this looking solid and you want to give yourself an easier time of making it look good, you absolutely have to let each stage dry, whether you just wiggle your piece about or you use a hairdryer or whatever. Make sure that each stage is dry before you stipple on it again or dry brush on it again. So you can see we're going pretty fast. We're already adding our Moot into our Warpstone. And we've got a much, much smaller selection of light kind of that we're having come out from the light source. The stippling shrinks, but the dry brushing continues. And especially those edges, they're really going to glint brightly, even if they are quite far away. It'll be a very small area, but it'll still be quite bright. Seeing carefully stippling just a smaller section of the doors. The nice thing about doing this separately is the light's not spilling out into the front of the doors because it just wouldn't reach there. They'd be in shadow. So we've gone pretty fast here. This is about 5 minutes of painting in real time. Still made really, really good progress at this stage. See me turning and turning and turning. It's the direction that's really important, coming away from our light source. You should be drawing a straight line from the center of your light to the center of your piece. And you drag your brush through that on that trajectory, and you take it past the piece that you're dry brushing. Don't stop at it, take it all the way. Bringing those edges, which of course are going to be a little bit brighter than the rest of it.
Now things look quite a bit more dull at this stage. White's going to do that. White doesn't make things brighter, it makes them lighter. So let's jump back. The mix on Moot. Probably a little bit of Fluro coming into play here as well. Can really start seeing things coming to life here. Now I actually think I overworked this piece. So with the benefit of future Byron and to hopefully help you avoid making the same mistakes, I could have pretty much moved on from a couple of steps time and just done a finishing steps, spent time on the edges and stuff like that. And I think the piece would have basically ended up just as good. But I put too much time into it, actually. So, yeah, my takeaway from that would be get the basics right. Even if you're trying to do a high-end job, get the basics right and then concentrate on the finishing details. It would be like little scratches or actual edge highlighting of bits that are specifically catching the light. Maybe a couple of glazes. If you wanted to get like some of the Lupercal green in the far off sections or something like that. Yeah, so here we're pretty much exactly 10 minutes in of real painting, as far as the OSL goes at least. And I think we could have basically stopped there. Again here, I was trying to copy something that I'd seen on some references, but I don't think it particularly worked really well. So as a default, I would have just painted these Lupercal green and brought them up a little bit with Warpstone, but not taken them any higher than that. These little details on the lighting fixture. And you can see me carefully going in here, changing my mind a couple of times about how I want to paint these lights. I looked at different references and they were different. So yeah, I couldn't quite make my mind up. My decision was whether I had them light in the center of the little glass bit or at the edges. And yeah, I tried a couple of things. Here I'm trying to underpaint the area on the housing that would have got a really heavy dose of the light. So that's going to be one of the brightest bits of the model that isn't the actual light source. I think I could have just used flat Fluro here. It is the light source after all. You can see me glazing the mix in, trying to bring things back a little bit. They've got a little bit too close to white, so this is going to bring the vibrancy back. So here's the point where I feel like I should have basically have stopped and just spent some time on the edges. But I was into it and I was overworking it and overthinking it. If in doubt, just walk away from your table, have a little look at how it is. And when you come back, you might feel quite differently about that. It just helps you be a bit more objective. Trying to darken things down and deepen them a little bit further away from the light sources here. So the Lupercal green's really nice for that. Don't have to worry about this being perfect at all. As long as it's quite thin and it's not leaving like drifts, you're absolutely fine. Okay, so this is what I should have jumped to doing much sooner. This is the stuff that's going to make a difference. Got the detailing, nothing too delicate. I've not got much paint on the brush, so it's not leaving super easily, and it's quite hard to make mistakes, actually, when your brush is set up like this. You can see me testing it a lot on the back of my thumb. I'm confident with how it's going to behave, and then we take it to the model. Again, what can the light see? That's what I'm touching on my brush, from the side that the light is on. completely different approach because I wasn't happy with them. So you can see here, a lot of what I'm doing is just re-establishing things that I'd already done previously. So hopefully your takeaway from this is that you don't need to waste more time than is necessary. And yeah, maybe you should not be so self-critical like I've preached all the way through this tutorial. And then I haven't put him to practice myself. I could have stopped 10 minutes in, put some edges on and been really, really happy with how the piece looked. And I could be painting the next thing. I've still got some time. I'm going to recommend a few resources. So there are some videos out from Zemitco Miniatures, which is fantastic. Squidmore has a video on OSL, and you should check out Orkbut and Juan El Miniaturista on Instagram as well. Some of these guys got Patreons. It's all going to be linked below. They're doing things at slightly higher level than me. So maybe if I was Wikipedia, they can be Encyclopedia Britannica for your OSL. Have fun with the technique, guys. Enjoy it. It's amazing. You can get effective stuff really, really fast. Thank you very much for tuning in.